What's up, everybody? It's Bob's Three-Toed Warriors from Studio 1329 with the Word on the Street, Season 1, Episode 17, titled, The Price is Wrong.
The price is wrong, Bobby.
All right, I used the clean version for all the kids out there, even though this is an explicit rated show, just in case words slip. But I like that one, so... now, I don't really think you're wrong, just to be clear. I just love messing with people's names. So, and today I have Mr. Garrett Price on the show from the Dynasty Nerds podcast. I love y'all's show. Garrett, how's it going, man?
It's going great, and I love that you use that clip because growing up, I was a big Adam Sandler fan. Who didn't like Happy Gilmore, Billy Madison, all of those. I mean, they're classic movies. Yep. So I can't tell you how many times in high school, middle school, college, I'd hear, "The price is wrong, Garrett," that kind of stuff. So it was always a good time. So I actually haven't heard it in probably 4 or 5 years. So it was kind of refreshing, actually.
There we go. Always pull out the classics, right?
Yeah.
Awesome. So I absolutely love you guys' show. We're going to talk about that in a second. You can catch my podcast just about every platform out there. Don't forget to subscribe, give a 5-star rating. It really helps out the new shows grow in their visibility, and I totally appreciate it. So please do that, everyone. On today's show, we are going to cover some listener questions, and we're going to talk the top 24-ish wide receivers, time dependent. But before we get to all that, Garrett, why don't you let everybody find out, tell them where they can find your work.
Yeah, so all of my stuff can be found at the Dynasty Nerds platform. So we have our podcast, which is probably, one of the most well-known parts about Dynasty Nerds is the podcast. It's been around for 5-6 years now. I've been a part of it for the last year and a half plus or so. So Matt and Rich have been at it for years. There was a couple other guys on at one point as well, but they've been doing a fantastic job for a long, long time now. And we try to make sure we keep up on that. We also have the website, and the website has all of our rankings. It has our nerd score.
Saying that word right.
What's that?
Thank you for saying that word right.
I know Rich can't put G's with things. I don't understand. At this point, I'm not sure if he can't do it or if he just refuses to do it. I'm leaning toward refuses because he's pretty stubborn. So that's what I'm leaning towards. But yeah, our rankings or rankins, as Rich would say, are on there. We have our film nerd scores. We have all of our film room where you can watch all of these incoming rookies and college players before you draft them for your dynasty teams. And we have some big things coming up here within the next couple months that we're very, very excited about. And hopefully one day we'll actually launch. Awesome. Yeah, so that's where everything's at. And then on Twitter, you can find me at Dynasty Price. I'm usually pretty engaging and active on, and not engaging. I'm usually pretty engaged. Hopefully I'm engaging. But I'm usually pretty engaged on there and trying to answer questions and post relevant information and that kind of stuff.
Fantastic. How did you get involved with the show?
So it's actually kind of funny. At one point, this would have been in like October, November of 2018. They put on the show. They made an announcement on there that they were looking for some more writers, and some buddies in my league. I had always kind of written up just a mock little, previews for the week. And it was basically just my opportunity to tell all the teams how trash they were in our league and, that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah.
And one of my buddies was like, Garrett, your stuff's actually not half bad. Maybe you should do it for people that like actually care.
Oh, damn.
Oh, okay.
High five and a punch in the balls at the same time.
Exactly. So I had kind of been considerate. I was always I was an okay writer, but I had never considered myself a writer. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to throw it out there, see what sticks. And sure enough, they liked it enough that they brought me on. And I'm actually in proximity. I'm not too terribly far from where Matt and Rich live. I live about an hour 15 away. And they had always done the pod together. They had never done it remotely or anything like that. But because I was close and they liked some of the work I was doing, at one point they're like, if you ever want to come up and do a guest spot on the pod sometime, drive up. You're more than welcome to. So I drove up and they were like, hey, you don't suck. So, would you want to do it? Would you want to do it more often? I was like, yeah, why not? And it just kind of stuck from there.
Okay, so have you since moved closer, or do you?
No, I drive
for every show.
Every single show.
Tell me you record back-to-backs.
We do record back-to-back, so that helps. Okay. But you have to imagine, so we kind of wait till our kids go to bed. So I'm usually not getting to Rich's house until about 8:45 or so. Okay. So we don't really start recording until 9. Mm-hmm. So by the time typically we're done and out of there, we're looking at 11:45 or so. So I'm not usually back to my house till 1 a.m. on Tuesday nights. So it's a labor of love, that's for sure.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Buy some extra flowers, right?
Exactly. So that's why I did not mind at all when we were quarantined and I could do it from my house. And they're like, well, quarantine's kind of over. You should probably come back up. Dang it.
That's funny. All right. So I do have some listener questions today, and quite a few of them from Twitter, Facebook, and we're going to answer those on the show. But first, I need to remind the listeners that I still have 3 spots to give away in our auction league. It's a free league. There's no admission for it. There should be. It's charged like $1 million because it's going to be a lot of fun. But we're going to draw 2 listeners that give me 5-star reviews on iTunes, screenshot it, and send it to me either at Bob's3Toad on Twitter, so at Bob's3Toad, or on Facebook, the Word on the Streets Fantasy Football Group. Started that up a couple days ago, and people are joining in, and it's going to be a good little time there. So little chats and the likes. So the final spot will be the best plea, and creativity absolutely counts on why you deserve to be in the listener league. This one, we'll give you a few weeks to create it. Probably be the last pick I do. And it just has to have something about the show in it. And that's all the clues I'm given. So get out there and have some fun, be creative, have some fun. I don't care if it's rap, a jingle, a video, a poem, a haiku. I don't care what it is. Just a couple sentences of why you deserve, but creativity counts. So, you ready for some listener questions?
Hey, hit me with them.
All right. I didn't prompt you on these. I know you are engaging on Twitter, and so you may have seen them because I did tag you on some of the Twitter ones. So
I tried to avoid them. I tried to I want to do it off the cuff. I want to do it, biased, unfiltered responses here.
All right, here we go. We're going in cold. All right, so Blake McDonald at Mac Attack 2005 says, I don't know if that means he's been a Mac since 2005. He was born in 2005. If he had a really bad Big Mac that gave him heartburn in 2005, we're going to find out what that means, Blake. Let us know. He says, in Dynasty, who would you want on your team out of the following 3 players and why? Juju, A-Rob, Ridley. You can only pick one. Now, I did ask him, I'm like, do you have to cut 2 of these or something? And he's like, nah, I was just curious. So I got a hunch this one will get taken care of in our rankings later, but who would you take there and why?
So this is really tough. I am not as big of a fan of Calvin Ridley as some other people are. Okay. So I'm a little bit lower on him. So that one was the slightly easier one for me. It's tough between A-Rob and Juju. I do like both of those players quite a bit. The nice part is I feel like their floor is not too terribly different because, well, we saw the absolute worst as to what can happen for Juju last year. So I guess that would have to be his floor. But basically anything that could go wrong did go wrong with Ben going down, with him being injured.
The Wildcat.
Yes. It was bad. It was really, really bad in Pittsburgh. But we also have an interesting situation in Chicago. Fortunately, A-Rob was just peppered with targets. However, if that drops or, they still don't get their quarterback situation quite figured out, if Miller emerges. So, there's a lot of things that could happen there. If you're going the safe route, I have no problem taking A-Rob. But if I had to do a 1-to-1 deal, I'm going to take the slight upside of Juju over.
That explosiveness too.
Yep, absolutely. And there's a real possibility that he's not a Pittsburgh Steeler, but I think he would get a lot of money to go somewhere else and play football where he would be the featured guy.
I can see that. And
he's so young. He's 23 years old.
He is. He doesn't have to up his bicycle anymore. He can lock up his Benz and his Bentley and everything else.
Exactly.
So those little glass rattles are my unofficial sponsor tonight. Butter Shots. DeKeeper? I can never say that. Butterscotch schnapps. So quite tasty over ice. What do you got, sir?
I'm much less exciting. I just got a cider here, Strongbow. I'm kind of weak when it comes to my alcohol game, unfortunately.
That's okay.
I don't garner a lot of respect in that arena.
That's all good. What flavor cider? Let's see how far this respect goes.
It's just golden apple.
Oh, that's good stuff. Okay.
Just straight basics.
I like it. All right. The next question, also from Mac Attack, he came back with the second one. He said, I also received this trade offer.
Okay. Return of the Mac. Here we go.
There we go. Ooh, too bad I can't find the clip for that one real quick. In 2020, I built my team to be a contender.
All right.
14-team, PPR, Dynasty League. And the offer I received is me giving up James Conner and getting Kerryon Johnson and the 2022nd first. Kind of weird to say 2022nd first. First 2 years.
So first
from
in 2022.
Yeah. First in 2022. That sounds much easier to say. Yes. So
it rolls off the tongue.
Connor and Kerryon for our first 2 years from now.
If I'm a contender, I'm keeping James Conner. I'm not the biggest James Conner fan, and I would not be shocked at all if he is not a Pittsburgh Steeler in 2021. That said, there's really nothing there that would give me huge pause to think that he wouldn't get the lion's share of the carries this year. I do like Anthony McFarland. I think he's a very, very talented player. But I'm very underwhelmed with Benny Snell. Samuels is more of a pass catcher, and even that was underwhelming last year. So the biggest thing with him is going to be health, but that's also what you get with Kerryon, and Kerryon's also splitting a backfield. So even though the 2022 pick is interesting, I'm a win now team. I need the player that can probably be hopefully my RB3 this year. Hopefully you're not counting on him as your RB2 because that's a little more risky. But as an RB3, I feel good about him.
That 2 years from now, it's just so far away.
It's so far. You know what? Honestly, I love the Devy stuff, so I'm kind of always looking at the picks and stuff like that. If it was a 2021, I'd be much more interested. But the 2022 class doesn't look super appealing at the moment. Now, a lot can change. Right? A lot can change.
Yeah.
But it doesn't look like the most appealing class at the moment.
Well, we always hear next year's class is better, right?
Next year's is always better.
Not this one. All right.
Not this time.
And that's because he had the trade on the board. That's pretty much what I also told him. I didn't want him to miss his trade offer in there. So,
yep. Good advice.
All right. So, Dynasty champs at First Place Dynasty. Ooh, that man's got an ego.
I like it.
Like it a lot. All right, so he says, he gave us a lot of detail here. Did I skip anybody? No, I didn't. Okay, cool. He said 40-man rosters.
Woo.
There's a reason. 2 QB,
okay.
IDP, and there's the reason.
That makes sense.
At first, I was like, whoa. And I missed IDP when I read it. I was like, what? So IDP, non-PPR, and he says, stupid, I know. Start 3 receivers. I own A-Rob. There's A-Rob again. DJ Moore, everybody's favorite right now. Ridley, here he is again. Marvin Jones, Campbell, Paris Campbell, Lazard, Sims Jr., and he has the 2-1 and the 2-2 for this year.
Okay.
So he wants to know, and his pick isn't today, so we're good. He wants to know, should he double up at receiver with those, or would that be overkill? And he figures Jefferson, Ruggs, Reagor will probably be what's available right there, and kind of what he's probably most interested in.
How many team league is it again?
I don't think it said. We'll assume 12. He didn't say.
Okay.
The other one was 14, so he didn't say. So probably 12.
Assuming it's 12. I would guess Jefferson and Reagor are going to not go into the second, but I could see T. Higgins, Pittman, Mims, those guys I think would be the ones, Ruggs maybe, would be the ones that would be more available. So for me, anytime I'm drafting, I'm a big best player available guy.
Mm-hmm.
I think you do yourself a disservice anytime you try to reach at a position to try to get a guy, because what happens is later on you could always take the best player and then trade them for something of equal value. as opposed to reaching at a position. So the only player in that range that would not be, assuming this is non-super flex, the only player that would – oh, it's 2 quarterback. I forgot about that. Okay, so that might push some of those guys down.
But it's definitely 2 quarterbacks. So, yeah.
Yeah, no. Okay, I forgot about that part. So that could push some of those guys down, Rager and Jefferson, when you have the addition of Herbert and Burrow and Tua all in there, that could push some of those guys down. So assuming none of those quarterbacks are there and available at that point, I am probably doubling up at receiver just because I think that's most likely going to be the best players that are on the board. Now, if you have somebody like potentially a Cam Akers or Keyshawn Vaughn in that range, I've seen them go in that range at times. If you personally like one of those guys better, I have no problem taking one of those 2 players. But for me, more than likely, I would be getting, Jalen Reagor and Michael Pittman Jr. and be thrilled about it.
Nice. I think I told him, because he also mentioned going the IDP route and going after Young. So I meant it seemed a little early, but yeah, a tad.
Yep.
But I assume he doesn't have much after that. So so either top 2 receivers, or if a good quarterback comes down, maybe a quarterback and a receiver.
Yeah. For some reason, Herbert falls.
Right.
I wouldn't think it would in 2 QB, but it's definitely possible. Now, if you're really dead set on wanting to get an IDP guy, I would have no problem taking 202 and trading it for 207 plus picking up 301 as well, or something like that. So you could still get, an IDP guy, but then later on take Van Jefferson, and so you still get 2 receivers, or take an upside running back like an Anthony McFarland or something like that.
I likes it. All right, so let's flip over to the Facebook questions.
All right.
So Mr. Dan White, he says he has CMC. Can't argue with that. Nope. He got offered Allen Robinson and Zeke for CMC. Can you argue with it now? Do you diversify, step back in running back and take what should be a good receiver with it?
Does he give any team context in this one?
Nah, I don't think he did. If he did, I didn't type it in here.
Okay.
So it would have been in a follow-up message. I don't think he did.
Yeah, it makes it a little difficult on this one because chances are typically when I see Christian McCaffrey trades, it's because they're not really a contender outside of Christian McCaffrey, and they're trying to load up on picks and young players and whatnot.
Sure.
This type of trade sounds like a contender to a contender is what it kind of strikes me as, and I could be wrong on that, but I'm just kind of inferring based on the context. If I am a win now team, as much as I do think that Zeke is going to have a very good year, and as much as I do really like Allen Robinson, in a 1-year deal type of thing, Christian McCaffrey just holds so much value that I would have a hard time not going that route. And, yes, there's a new offense and all of that, but we got Teddy Two Gloves now at quarterback, and he loves to check down to his running backs. He has no problem with that. We saw Alvin Kamara get quite a few catches from Teddy Two Gloves. So I'm probably sticking with CMC.
Holding your ground. All right. There we go. Y'all heard the answer. Then we have Adam. I'm going to butcher your last name, Adam. I'm not even going to do it. Kvalheim. Kvalheim. Keeper League. He says, this one was interesting. Yeah, this one was interesting. He said, I have Dalvin Cook and Thielen. Okay. I have to trade or drop Thielen. I don't know why this rule is there or how it works, but he has to trade him or drop him. Can't keep him. Would you trade Cook and Thielen to receive Michael Thomas? And I know what I would say here, and we don't have enough information for what I would say here, but what would you say here?
Well, assuming that there's a realistic possibility that you're going to get nothing for Thielen.
That's a freebie. So it's really Dalvin Cook for Michael Thomas.
Yeah, I would absolutely do that. Yeah. There's a ton of risk involved with Dalvin Cook. And as much as he lit the world on fire last year, he's not far removed from some pretty significant injuries. And even last year, he still missed 2 games. And then you have the whole potential holdout on top of that. Do I think that's likely? No. But, even if that's just a 5% chance, you have a 0% chance that Michael Thomas is holding out.
Right.
And at this point, he is the best receiver in football, and he's getting his quarterback back, which that was going to be the one thing that could maybe slightly fluctuate Michael Thomas's value if Drew Brees didn't return, but Drew Brees is back. So I expect him to get fed. I don't think the addition of Emmanuel Sanders is really going to cut in much to Michael Thomas's workload. So yeah, I would definitely be willing to do that for Michael Thomas.
Since we can't see the rosters, if he is somehow stacked at wide receiver and not at running back, do you A, still do it, or do you B, do it anyway and then try and flip Thomas for a running back you feel better about?
That's exactly what I would do. I would still make the deal because I think the value is there regardless.
Because you can use that top ticket.
Exactly. I mean, there's not – basically the only players that I don't think you could get for Michael Thomas would be Barkley and CMC. I think you could probably get basically any other player.
There you go. You guys heard it.
Yeah, I that's what I would do.
All right. Ryan Johnson says he has the first pick. Everybody loves the first pick.
Absolutely.
I don't know if this could be a redraft or I'm assuming it's redraft and not a dynasty startup. So he has the first pick, 12-team, half PPR, CMC or Barkley. He says, I think Barkley is poised to blow up, but CMC is a safer option. What say you?
I'm a big Saquon fan, and I agree that I think Saquon's going to blow up.
Those thighs are going to blow up.
Oh, yeah, dude. He's a monster. He is such a monster. However, as much as it pains me in redraft, I am probably still taking CMC. And my reasoning is in those first 2 to 3 rounds, you really can't afford to miss. Yep. And so I'm really going with the safest players possible that I know exactly what I'm getting out of them. Then once I get to rounds 4, 5, 6, give me upside. I'm going upside for days there, but I need my core. I need to be able to count on my core. And so the fewer variables, the fewer possibilities of things going wrong, the more enticing they are for me in those early rounds.
All right, so you heard him. CMC, don't get cute. Just take CMC. But if you just love Barkley and you just got to own him, it is still fantasy football.
Have
some fun and grab your guy.
And if it's Dynasty, I might go Barkley personally.
There you go. Since it didn't say there's that too.
There's that caveat.
All right, so here's my question.
All right.
And it kind of is going to lead into A, the next question, and the B, the joke I shot at you as we were getting ready to get on the show. So didn't even intend to, but how long do you sit on top quality aging wide receivers like Julio Jones? Do you trade him now, or do you ride it out to the last 3 years-ish of productivity and then wait for him to fall off? Or what do you like to do here?
So,
and I know there's.
Are we talking redraft? Are we talking dynasty? Or are we talking
dynasty?
Okay, all right. So in dynasty, let's assume you're a contender.
I was gonna say let's give both examples.
Okay,
that's really probably the differentiator.
That's the biggest differentiator for me. Yep. So if you're a contender, I have no problem putting feelers out to see what people are willing to pay.
Sure.
But I'm not selling Julio on the cheap, because when you're looking at I could win it all this year, there is still a very, very real possibility that Julio Jones is the top 5 wide receiver. He's showed no real signs of, oh man, he's really about to fall off. He's slowed down a lot. He's, super injury prone. He's always had kind of the foot stuff that he's been up here.
The nagging.
Yeah. But he doesn't ever miss a lot of time. And he's always going to give you some of those like really, really huge weeks as well. So I'm holding put if I'm a contender. Now, if I am rebuilding, he's the first one to go because I think he does still hold some value at this point. And the longer you hold him, the longer you risk that one injury that could be a career ender. The quicker that, all of a sudden he looks really slow in preseason and everybody gets scared. And, there's a plethora of things that could happen. So in a team that is rebuilding, not truly contending, and when I say rebuilding, I'm considering the middle ground as rebuilding too, because if you're in the middle ground and you don't have some young assets coming up, you need to be rebuilding.
Yeah.
So, if you're a middle of the road team with no real picks and young assets coming up, or if you're a full out rebuild, try to sell him, see if you can get, a pick this year, and maybe you'll end up basically being straight up for CeeDee Lamb or something like that will at least give your team an opportunity to have some time to get that alpha receiver back, because by the time you're contending, he's probably not going to be worth anything.
There you go. You heard him. Don't be Malcolm. Don't be in the middle. All right. So that was about as cheesy a dad joke as they get.
Hey, it's all good, man. I got 2 girls. I know how it goes.
All right. So let's slide over to the top 24-ish Dynasty wide receiver conversation. I have these amazing rankings up from this website called the Dynasty Nerds. It's like, I almost feel like I'm part of the nerd herd right here.
There you go. You're in.
So here we go. At number 1, you have Mr. Michael Thomas.
Yep.
I don't know if we even need to debate that, do we?
It would be tough to at this point. I think he's pretty safe right there.
I think so too. I don't think we have to spend a lot of time on him. He's still young. He's still talented. He has a great quarterback, and now he has a quarterback behind that great quarterback that could be the quarterback that looks like it could be fun for a couple of seasons.
You know what? I just realized something real quick.
Please.
Hold on. I might have made a mistake. I might have sent you the consensus. I might not have sent you my personal ones.
I think you did, because I have ranking 1 and I have best here.
You
read to me and I'll just listen.
So here, and do you want me to send them to you again?
Yeah,
that make it easier?
Yeah.
All right, here, let me send them to you real quick.
So while he's sending me to that, let's talk about why you people need to follow his show and my show. It's fun. We like to have fun. We like to have a good time. We like to crack silly dad jokes. I don't know if you guys do as many dad jokes as I tend to throw out there, because I'm just
Rich throws out a lot of jokes. I don't know if they're dad jokes, but he definitely throws out a lot. So you called me an ageist earlier with my ranking of Julio. You're going to think I'm a straight up hater now when you see my personal ones.
Okay.
So it's going to be a little hot takey, I think.
All right.
So here we go. I'm sending them over.
There we go.
Sorry for the delay, everyone watching.
That's all right. We can talk while we type here. So we still have Michael Thomas first.
Yes.
And then we still have
Slight switch.
All right.
At the top.
At second and third, I've got Davante Adams and DeAndre Hopkins. And second and third.
Yeah. So for me, I have DeAndre Hopkins second, and then Adams third. But it's really a coin flip there. Oh, did I send you? You know what?
You sent me the same thing.
I sent you the same ones. Awesome. This is great. This is going really well.
Oh, it's all good. This is
these look really familiar.
Yeah, I was like, all right, yeah, you did.
You didn't really change anything that good. My goodness.
It's all good. It's all good.
Rookie hour.
There we go. So in second, we have DeAndre Hopkins, followed by Davante Adams in third.
There we go. All right, there it is. We're good now.
All right, so you're the one driving up DeAndre Hopkins in the group then.
That is me. I think Rich is helping out with that as well.
Is he?
Yeah.
Right.
So I'm a little bit higher than most. I'm not too worried about the transition to Arizona.
Okay.
I know that's kind
all
of
the mouths to feed versus the no mouths to feed in Green Bay.
Yeah. So the thing with that is I think there's an offensive shift in philosophy happening in Green Bay.
Okay.
And so even though I do still think Davante Adams is going to absolutely be fed, I just don't know that the passing game is going to be as big of a priority as it was before. Whereas I think they're going to go all out air raid in Arizona. Mm-hmm. And we do see that there's potentially a lot of mouths to feed, but there's really so it's Larry Fitzgerald, who he's at the end of his career. It's been great, but he's not Larry Fitzgerald anymore.
I know, I agree.
And I'm a super ageist. On top of that, Christian Kirk, could he end up being a thing? He absolutely could, but he hasn't really shown much yet to say that he is a thing. So they don't really utilize the tight end at all. You have guys like Andy Isabella and Hakeem Butler, and could one of them blossom? Sure, it's definitely possible. But I think they're really far from established there, despite what most people think. So that's why I'm not too terribly worried about it.
And there's that fact that Hopkins is just simply amazing.
He is.
That doesn't hurt. Guys,
it does not hurt at all.
All right, so Davante Adams, we kind of talked about him a little. The weird part is he doesn't have a big threat in the wide receiver corps, but they did go out and get wide receivers the last couple of years. They just haven't grown into their shoes yet or something.
Yeah, no, they really haven't. I mean, you have MVS, you have Economy St. Brown, and yeah, exactly. Lazard, who people are kind of hoping ends up being the guy. So they added Funchess in the offseason, which I don't know what to think about that, but
that's an interesting one. Maybe they really just don't like Jay Sternberger.
maybe that's what it is.
Go play tight end, Funchess. All right. At number 4, we have Tyreek Hill, the freak.
Yep.
That man is fun to watch.
He's not slow. That's for sure.
Slow. I love it every time that the running back's like, I got a breakaway touchdown. What the hell are you doing here?
He's running up on him, tapping him on the back, and yeah.
So it's so embarrassing.
He's fun, man, and he's still so young too.
Yes.
Still so young.
We don't really feel threatened with Kels being there, with Mecole Hardman taking a deep step away. They just have so much targets. Like, who are you going to cover?
And that's the thing. Like, it's really tough to it's pick your poison. But he's already built up a good rapport with Mahomes, and anytime you're attached to that man, it's things are looking good. So you have this young duo for a long time. He's already kind of cemented his role in this offense, and yeah, it's I mean, you could make an argument that I might be too low on him, but I've seen him anywhere from 2 to 7 or 8, but I feel like we're on the 4 or 5 range is about right for him.
He's probably, off the top of my head, he's probably the most swingiest, boom busty, secure one of the players out of the 4. Am I crazy?
For sure, because week to week, there are some times where he'll have just a weird, like out of the blue, 2 catches for 18 yards, and you're like, what happened? Yeah. But then he makes up for it next week with 3 80-yard touchdowns, and you're feeling great.
All right, so then we hit Mr. Chris Godwin and Odell Beckham. I'm going to wrap one more in this. At 5, 6, and 7, Chris Godwin, Odell Beckham, and Mike Evans, his teammate, not Beckham's teammate, but Godwin's teammate. So
for me, there's kind of a top 4. I think they're kind of in their own tier for me personally.
Okay.
I do like tiers. What's that?
I do like tiers. Thank you.
Tiers are helpful for me. We might need to even add those on the site at some point. Maybe I just decided.
Give you homework.
There we go. But really 5 through 9-ish range. They're kind of all one big tier for me. So you could kind of move all those guys anywhere within there. I think 9 times out of 10, Chris Godwin will be at the top of that tier for me. I think he is, you have the young age, but just how productive he has been this past year in Tampa Bay. You add Tom Brady into that equation, we assume that is going to work well. Right. Now, that there is a little bit of a risk involved because Tom Brady is not a spring chicken, but we do know he loves to target the slot. Chris Godwin's running out of the slot. He's a big physical player. I think he's going to be just fine, and he's going to be a solid asset for a long time. OBJ is probably the most controversial one in this group.
Yeah.
And I totally understand, and I have no problem with people questioning that one because he's very risky. He has not done what we've wanted him to do in a long time, whether that's just from not producing as much as we'd hope or injuries. He's been banged up quite a bit. However, I'm falling in love with the new scheme that's going to be in Cleveland. I think Baker, similar to who did we talk about? Oh, Juju earlier. Similar to Juju, it felt like anything that could go wrong for Baker Mayfield last year did go wrong. One of my buddies, Jared Wackerly, on Twitter, he put together, and this was through week 11 or 12, something like that. He put together a video of all of Baker Mayfield's interceptions. And it was really interesting to see because it was 75% of them were off of his own receiver's hands. Mm-hmm. And so it was just really bad luck. Anything that could go wrong. We know Freddie Kitchens was not the the highest IQ individual that we've ever had as a head coach. And so I think Odell Beckham is poised for a good bounce back year. And he's still relatively young. He's only 27 years old. So,
yeah,
he's still got time to do a lot there in Cleveland. So I have no problem him being anywhere within this tier. It's just right now I have question marks kind of about all of these guys. So Mike Evans, I'm considering moving him down a little bit, which I know seems funny because I just hyped up Chris Godwin. They're in the same offense. Mike Evans reminds me of a guy where he's never been this athletic specimen. He's always been fast enough. He's a very good contested catch player, but I am genuinely worried at some point we're going to have the Des Bryant effect that happens sometimes with these contested catch guys where their skills just deteriorate just enough that they're just really not creating separation. They're not really able to leap as much as they once were able to, and their production drastically drops. I could see a cliff like that happening for Mike Evans. I'm not saying it will happen. I'm not saying it's this year, but I'm not convinced we're not super far away from that happening for him.
Okay.
So he does make me a little bit nervous.
Well, the next person makes me more nervous. So
what's that?
Go ahead. I said the next person makes me more nervous. So go ahead with number 8.
He makes me nervous too, man. He makes me nervous too, and that's why these guys are all in a different tier because Amari Cooper is like playing whack-a-mole, man. Like,
right.
1 week you're like, oh my gosh, Amari Cooper just got me 40 points. Like, this is incredible. And then he decides to take 2 weeks off. And, sometimes he's hurt. Sometimes it looks like he's not trying. So he's all over the place.
Amari Cooper feels like that paycheck that comes once a month instead of weekly or every 2 weeks.
Yes, that's exactly what it feels like. Just throwing it all up. Just throwing it all up. But the talent is undeniable. True. He is in a fantastic offense with a really good young quarterback.
Yep.
And he himself is not that old either. He's 26 years old. So he has a long career ahead of him. I still expect his end of the year results year in and year out to still put him in right around that fringe wide receiver 1 range. And if you can get that for another 5 years or so, you're going to be pretty happy with that. And so that's why he's there. And then DJ Moore, he is kind of the Twitter darling.
Yeah.
Everybody loves DJ
everybody's
Moore.
Lover.
Yes, everybody loves him. But let's not pretend like there's no risk there. I mean, it is a brand new offense. Teddy Bridgewater is a capable quarterback. But we haven't seen him really produce some great fantasy wide receivers in the past. Like, that's not what he's been known for. He hasn't been a consistent starter in the league in 4 seasons, 5 seasons. It's been a while, at least, since he's been a starter. So there's actually quite a few mouths to feed there. Obviously you have Christian McCaffrey in the backfield, but Curtis Samuel is there as well. They brought in Robbie Anderson was with Matt Rule at Temple, so they've got a relationship there. Even Ian Thomas is a good young up-and-coming tight end. So he's risky in his own right. So all of these players are good. All of them are still relatively young. OBJ and Evans are a little bit on the older side, but they're still all relatively young. But I expect them to finish as wide receiver 1s for the next 2 or 3 years. But they all carry a little bit more risk than I think those top-end guys carry.
Makes sense. Let's talk about number 10, 11. Speaking of youngsters, let's talk about Juju and A.J. Brown.
Yeah, these guys are young guns, and they're both uber talented players. Juju, we've seen what the ceiling is for him, and we've seen what the floor is for them. I've touched on him a little bit, so I'm not going to spend as much time on him. But he could end up being wide receiver 3 on the season, and it wouldn't shock me. He could end up being wide receiver 33 on the season, and it wouldn't shock me. So it's just kind of what Juju, but more so than I think his game. It's what are we getting out of the Steelers offense is more of it.
Yeah.
A.J. Brown.
That'll be a tough one for me as to why I usually avoid, possibly to my detriment, those type of players where I'm just like, it's just too far of a spring, especially in the early parts for me. If I can catch them later,
tough.
But
I don't have a lot of Juju shares either.
Yeah.
Yep. I don't have a lot of Juju shares either. I usually, because I play in a lot of super flex, so I'm usually finding myself taking quarterbacks in that range But AJ Brown is fascinating. So on pure talent alone, so when I rank pre-draft, he was my wide receiver 1. Now, I unfortunately fell for the narrative of, the Titans and Marcus Mariota, and I didn't move him down a ton. I think I moved him down to my wide receiver 3. But because of that, I didn't get nearly as many shares of him as I would have if I would have left him alone. He's crazy, crazy talented. He's built almost like a running back. I mean, he's thick compared to a lot of these other receivers that we see out there. Love his game. Love some of the yards after the catch stuff that he can do as well. But he was about as efficient as you could possibly be last year. So if he doesn't increase in targets, he's more than likely to regress in total numbers.
Right.
But long term, I'm buying the talent of this player. So I'm willing to have him as a top 12 guy. And then to round out my top 12, I have Allen Robinson, who we touched on earlier. He's not as sexy as a lot of these other names, but man, does he produce. And, you know,
is he not as sexy, or is his situation not as sexy?
That's fair. You know, anything in Chicago right now is not very sexy on offense. So
I was like, wait a minute, I'm in Chicago.
Just on the offense.
Okay. I'm just kidding. Well, partially I'm in Aurora, so I'm not that far. All right. Number 13, Stephon Diggs. Number 14, Cooper Kupp. Wait a minute. Yeah. Okay.
Yep. Yeah, these ones are mine, not someone else's.
No, the next image had it starting again. I was like,
oh, did it cut off funny? Yeah. All right, so Stephon Diggs and Cooper Kupp are both really interesting players. It feels like Stephon Diggs is way older than Cooper Kupp, but they're actually like the same age. So it's kind of interesting. Cooper Kupp just was in college a lot longer than some of these other guys were. They find themselves both in interesting situations this year. So Stephon Diggs, I'm probably higher than most people on Stephon Diggs. I don't think many people have him this close to their wide receiver one range. I think that he was underused in Minnesota. There were a lot of plays where, and I wish I had the numbers in front of me, but the type of plays that he had downfield that were overthrows, it was like an astronomical number. They just didn't do a great job of getting him the ball where he needed to get the ball, but we've seen where that upside is. I mean, he's had plenty of games where he's just shredding defenses, 2-3 TDs in a game. He now ends up in Buffalo, which is a really interesting situation because Josh Allen is not known for his accuracy either. However, there's really not much else as far as star power in anywhere else in their receiving game or at the tight end position. So I think he is going to have a monster load of targets. And I think just on that alone, it's going to push him up right into that, top 15 wide receiver range for this season. And then Cooper Kupp, he's older than people think he is. He's 27 years old. And he now finds himself in a situation without Brandon Cooks, which has happened a lot while they've been in LA because of how much Brandon Cooks has been injured. But he's going to have the opportunity to get a pretty good target share as well. And I think the Rams offense, although I don't necessarily expect them to be as bad as they were last year, I also don't necessarily expect them to be as good as they were the year before. So I think we're going to be looking at somewhere in between there. But even in a year where a bunch of things went wrong for the Rams, he still finished the year as wide receiver 4 or 5. I mean, it was absolutely absurd. Now, he cooled off dramatically in the second half compared to the first half. And so that's kind of why I have him tiered a little bit lower than some of these other guys. But I think he should still have a pretty good career for the next 2, 3, 4 seasons.
All right, let's talk about one of my boys, Galladay. Mr. Kenny Galladay.
Kenny G's pretty sexy, man.
I don't go that. I go Galladay because I'm a Broncos fan. We used to have number 11 Holiday on our team, and every time we run that ball back, I'd be like Holiday. And so Galladay just rhymed, and that's where it came from. So
it got stuck. I like it. All right, well, Mr. Galladay over here.
Yeah.
Another situation where there's really not a lot of else there. Marvin Jones is a good player, probably underrated player, but don't get it twisted. The offense runs through Kenny Galladay. With Matt Stafford last year, both those guys were looking fantastic. I expect if Stafford is able to stay healthy, we'll see that again. And even though he's also similar to Cooper Kupp, he kind of came out a little bit later, so he's a little bit older. Next year, none of the receivers, the only receiver that is under contract at this point for the Lions is Quintez Cephas, who they just drafted. So, I mean, there's really going to be nobody else there. I expect them to re-sign Galladay, but I'm not sure that he's going to be getting any reliable targets alongside him anytime soon. And even if they do draft a wide receiver early next year, it takes a little while for those guys to get acclimated to the offense.
Sure.
he's still going to be in that wide receiver 1 range for the next 3, 4, 5 years.
All right, let's head over to Mr. currently getting very disrespected, Keenan Allen.
So I have never been a huge Keenan Allen guy personally.
It's okay.
However, it's interesting because this year I actually find myself getting him in places because it's gone from
because of the price.
I kind of always what's that?
Because of the price?
Exactly. So I always kind of thought the price was a little bit too high. So I never ended up getting him. But now the hate has gone too far and nobody's drafting him anywhere and they're just not touching him. I get the concerns with who's going to be throwing him the football. But if we look at it, Phillip Rivers has not been the same those past couple of years compared to what he used to be. So I think Tyrod Taylor is he's not known for these big, crazy down the field passes. A guy like Keenan Allen will probably be a good safety blanket for him. I think he'll still get a lot of targets. And then eventually, if Justin Herbert can develop into the guy that many think he can end up being, you're going to have a much better product on the field than we've seen out of the past couple of years from Phillip Rivers. So I do think that there's still a few years left in the tank for good old Keenan Allen.
Now you heard Mr. Garrett Price there. He said the price is right on Mr. Keenan Allen. Terry McLaurin, everybody loves him. They be Mick loving him. They be calling him F1. What do you guys like to call him on the show? We like to call him Terry McLaurin.
Yeah. I never fell in love with the scary Terry. Usually I call him F1
Skip that
on Twitter.
Sorry.
Yeah, I usually call him F1 on Twitter just because it's quicker
there you go.
than trying to type it all out. But yeah, we usually just use the full name. We go government on this. So I love Terry McLaurin. I've been a big fan of his as a rookie. I have him on a lot of teams. He was being somewhat disrespected last year, I think, in the whole process. And he really showed out. And once again, this seems to be a theme from some of the guys I've been talking about recently, but there's really not a lot else there. Steven Sims Jr. is an interesting player. I expect him to be starting out of the slot. Then you have Kelvin Harmon and Antonio Gandy-Golden that'll battle for that outside spot, that Z receiver. But it's really going to all funnel through Terry McLaurin again. And he put up all those numbers in only 14 games, so he missed a couple games in there. And it was with a whole myriad of quarterbacks. It seemed like every few weeks there was a new guy in there. And Dwayne Haskins struggled mightily for a few weeks there, really kind of turned it on at the end, and I expect to see that kind of continue this year for Dwayne Haskins. But I really just don't see a situation where he doesn't end up as a solid wide receiver 2 this year for your fantasy team. And I think that's where you're going to see him for the foreseeable future.
All right, we're going to hit 2 rookies before we get to the man here. We're gonna hit one rookie that I think has a ton of early opportunity, although the recent chatter says not, and then one that we'll see. So Mr. Jalen Reagor followed by Mr. CD Lamb.
Yeah, so it's tough. I had them ranked pretty close ahead of time, and just the opportunity that Reagor is going to have early kind of help bump him legitimately one spot ahead of CD Lamb. But obviously I have them both very close. Reagor, super, super explosive. He's got the speed. He's got pretty good hands. He had some concentration drops at times, but you would see some fantastic acrobatic away from the body catches that he was able to make. For a smaller player, he's not afraid to go over the middle. And similar to a guy that we saw last year, like a Deebo Samuel, when he gets the ball in his hands, he kind of turns into a running back. And he can do some crazy things in the open field. He can make guys miss. He's got the wheels. I'm a big fan of his. I think if things go well, he could end up being a wide receiver 1 in fantasy football for a long time to come. And then CeeDee Lamb was such a complete prospect as a wide receiver. I mean, he legitimately, the only thing that you could even remotely negative say was he's not the fastest, but he's not slow in any way, shape, or form.
Right.
I mean, there was no real obvious holes in his game. So it's just going to be tough because he's not going to demand the target share that some of these other guys are going to be able to demand. But I think at some point the cream rises to the top, and they're just not going to be able to help it. They're just going to have to give that man the ball.
There you go. Just destroying some of my shares in the Cowboys wide receiver core. All right. So now for the real deal. And I feel like this guy is very Kenny Galladay-ish to me.
Yeah, I could see that.
Personally, I do. And I absolutely love him. Mr. Courtland Sutton, straight out of my Broncos.
I was going to say, I'm guessing by the jerseys behind you, you're a big Broncos fan.
Yep.
I see that. No, Cortland Sutton is a fantastic wide receiver. And even looking at this, it's tough. This range, I love to draft wide receivers in this range because there's just so much upside here. All of these guys, I'm like, I have Terry McLaurin that low. I have Cortland Sutton that low. I have this guy that low. I want to move all these guys up. I'm trying to find ways.
There's only so much room.
There's only so much room at the top. But he's a really, really good player. A lot of his value is really going to hinge on, is Drew Lock the real deal? Because we know Cortland Sutton's the real deal.
Yeah.
He is a fantastic wide receiver. He can do a lot of the, I'm bigger than you, I'm stronger than you, I'm going to go up and get the football, and there's nothing you can do about it. Yeah. And that's just what I love about his game. And you're right, he does have a very similar game to Kenny Golladay. So I love him as a player. It's really going to come down to, is Drew Lock the real deal? And then how are all these targets distributed? Because now we have Jerry Jeudy there, who is a fantastic player. We have KJ Hamler, although I'm not the biggest fan of KJ Hamler. It is another mouth to feed. He's a speed guy. He's going to be great, presumably out of the slot, although Jeudy did a lot of that as well. So I'm curious to see how that's going to shake out. And then they have a great tight end in Noah Fant and an up-and-comer that was Drew Lock's teammate in Albert O. Yep. So at some point, even though I think he's much more of a developmental guy and it's still going to be a few years, that's a mouth to feed. And now you have Melvin Gordon in the backfield. Yep. Phillip Lindsay still around. So, I mean, there's only so much to go around. So my expectations are slightly tempered for this season, but long-term, it wouldn't surprise me if he still ends up being just as dominant as he was this past year.
All right, let's slide over to Mr. Deebo Samuel. Got to be getting injured in the offseason. What's up?
I know. He had to do that on me. I am a big Deebo fan. I drafted him quite a bit last year, and I was very happy with things. Most of my picks turned out really great last year. The J.J. Arcega-Whiteside did not turn out as well, but there's still time. I'm crossing my fingers. But Deebo, like I said about Rager, turns into a running back after the catch. He is such a physical player, but unfortunately that does get him in trouble at times. He's injured. He was injured a decent amount in college. So that's the risk that you run there. But he is a hand-in-glove fit for the type of stuff that Shanahan wants to do. And so I expect him to be, despite the Ayuk pick, I think Ayuk is much more of a helping your real-life football team more so than like this amazing fantasy asset. And so I still think Deebo is going to be the guy. And I know a bunch of people say, well, Ayuk could come in and steal that while he's injured and blah, blah, blah. Let's remember a few things about this offseason. One, we have COVID-19 going on. So They really haven't gotten to do anything with these rookies at this point. And from most reports that I'm hearing, it sounds like he's only going to be missing a handful of games, 3-4 games. Now, obviously, things can get much worse. It's hard to tell for sure. But My guess is in 4 games with a shortened preseason and not much training camp, I don't know that Ayuk's going to be able to overtake Deebo Samuel as the number one there. So I think long-term, I'm still investing in Deebo.
All right, so at number 22, we have a guy whose teammate was disrespected. And I feel like, personally, Mike Williams is even more disrespected. Maybe I've just never – I don't think I've ever owned him on a single team. And, I had 14 teams last year. It's, hard not to own him. I feel like I avoided dodging him or something. I don't know why. But let's talk about number 22, Mike Williams, wide receiver from the Chargers.
I love Mike Williams.
All right, there we go.
I'm a big Mike Williams fan. And honestly, the drafting of Herbert, he's the one that could potentially benefit the most from that out of all of the players that are on that offense right now. Because we saw over and over again, Mike Williams, not getting a ton of targets, but when he did, there were these horribly underthrown balls, and it looks like Duck Hunter out there where somebody just shot the football out of the sky and it's just fluttering everywhere. And yet still Mike Williams would come up with 2 or 3 catches a game where he's jumping over dudes and making one-handed catches and all this stuff. So, you saw the potential that was there, but it just never really came to fruition because they just really couldn't get the man the football. So similar to Cortland Sutton, really relying heavily on Drew Lock, I think Mike Williams is really going to be very dependent on how quickly and how efficiently does Justin Herbert become that guy, because that's one of his biggest strengths is he's got an absolute cannon. He's going to have no problem getting the ball downfield to him. It's just how soon will that chemistry develop? Is he as good as he was in college? There's a lot of ifs, ands, or buts in there.
So we're going to hit number 23, which we kind of already talked a little bit about before we talk about what the hell number 24 here. But at 23, and I'm looking at how far behind was he? Oh, only 4 spots. Okay. So at 23, we have Jerry Jeudy. He's only 4 spots behind CeeDee Lamb. That's what I was looking for.
Oh, gotcha.
So let's talk a little Jerry Jeudy.
So Jerry Jeudy is probably the best route runner that I've watched as far as college players coming out. Now, granted, I haven't been doing this forever. It's not like I have this 20-year resume or anything like that. But he was just head and shoulders above everybody else. The way that not only can he accelerate, but decelerate so well. He's got very, very fluid hips, which allows him to really, at the junction point of routes, really create a lot of separation. So he's just such a technician of the game. I really like Jerry Jeudy. My concern with him was I worry a little bit about his strength. He's got a very slight build to him. And there was some of the things that I was watching on tape where when I saw him go over the middle, I would see some alligator arms at times. And so I don't think he absolutely loves contact. I don't think,
I don't either, man. These linebackers are big. Come on.
They're big boys. Boys. But honestly, that's me being very nitpicky because I had to figure out a way to separate Rager, CeeDee, Jeudy, and then some of these other guys. But, he absolutely belongs in that same conversation and same tier as those guys. But he falls into the same range as Courtland Sutton. How many mouths? Who's going to be the alpha? Is there going to be an alpha? Until we kind of have that cleared up, it's going to be hard for me to put him much higher than this.
I get it. And to wrap up number 24 with the ageist pick of ageist picks, Mr. Julio Jones.
Julio Jones.
Guy is so talented, so targeted. He's going to have some more years for you. Should anyway. Come on, man. 24. Can we get that bumped right here live on the air? Can we get that bumped a little? Come on.
I mean,
he's got to be better than somebody here.
I don't know who I'm going to put him ahead of. And look, I get it. Now, if I was drafting for redraft, he's still top 5 for me.
Yeah.
Or at least top, 6 or 7. Like he's in that range absolutely.
Yeah. The longevity is longevity.
That's the thing. When I do these rankings, I'm doing them basically like I'm doing a startup draft. And for me, it would be really, really difficult for me to invest a top 3 round pick in a guy that I can't guarantee I'm getting at least 3 years out of. It's just really hard because that's such valuable draft capital. Yeah. You're making that the cornerstone of your team. And so unless I've already traded all of my picks and I'm already saying I'm all in right from the startup draft, I'm going for, that right away. It would just be really hard for me to invest in him. So this is not saying that I think he has fallen off. This is not saying that I don't think he's going to get another 1,300 yards this season. It's just
the amount of seasons.
Yeah. If I can only get 3 years, and that's probably best case scenario. Sure. A wide receiver in today's NFL being able to play at 34, 35 is tough to do, especially with the way that he plays football.
I dig it. I still love you, Julio. All right. Let's stop all that craziness. Let's slide over to a little redraft action here.
All right.
And so I'm going to give you my ask all question. I give all my guests. I like this question. It's a fun little chance for people to try and find some values in their redraft, drafts. So, all right. So we're looking for one quarterback, one running back, one wide receiver that you, Mr. Price, can possibly see finishing in the top 5. So they blow up, have a huge season, even though they weren't supposed to. But you're able to get them as the 13th or later at their position. So we'll start with what I always feel is kind of the easier one, the quarterback.
Yeah, that's probably the easiest out of. And I do so much Dynasty that I don't have, the ADP quite as roughly memorized as I do the Dynasty ADP.
I'll let you know where they fall. I'll let you know.
Okay. But off the top of my head, the 2 guys that come to mind, Jared Goff.
Okay, 19.
What is he at?
19.
He's at 19.
19. He's
That's a steal.
let me hear your other name before I tell you who's in front of him.
Matthew Stafford would be the other name.
All right. 13.
Okay.
Yeah. So Stafford, Baker, Jones, Roethlisberger, Tannehill, Burrow, Goff.
Okay. Yeah. I could see and Baker, I assumed Baker was inside there, so I could see Baker being one of those guys too. All three of those guys. Jared Goff, he was quarterback 13 last year when everything went absolutely terrible. So if he's still that efficient, in the worst possible year, getting him at 19 is an absolute steal because I can't imagine things would go worse than that. So I think that's a good steal. I expect the Browns offense to really take a tick up. The only thing that would keep Baker out of there, I think, would be how much I expect them to run the football. So that could hamper that a slight little bit. And then Matthew Stafford was on pace to be I'm trying to remember what it was. It was somewhere just outside of the top 5 last year. Yeah. And he's got more weapons this year than he did the year before. So I could absolutely see him being in that conversation as well.
I dig those. Give me a running back or two that you feel would have that same opportunity.
So running back's a little trickier. One that comes to mind right away would be Chris Carson. And
19.
That's all going to kind of depend on if he's healthy. And I think that's probably why his ADP is the way it is right now, because we assume he is going to start the season. But do we really know for sure? We don't. They added Hyde. We know pretty confidently that Penny won't be there. My sneaky guy, DJ Dallas, is there. I do love me some DJ Dallas. But I think if he's fully healthy, he will get the lion's share of the workload, and he could easily be a guy that would sneak into that conversation.
Awesome. All right, let's move over to a wide receiver.
I'm going to stay on brand. Give me Terry McLaurin. Give me Terry McLaurin. There's nobody
27th.
else. Yeah, that's because he's being disrespected. There's nobody to throw the football to there.
I get it.
There's nobody there. And when you have guys like Darius Slay, who is one of the best corners in the NFL, complimenting a rookie's game afterward, there's something there. Everybody's talked about how much of a technician he is as a route runner. He had that 4.3, 4.39 40 that he ran. So, he's got blazing speed. And hopefully there will be just enough out of Sims and whoever ends up being the Z receiver out of Harmon and Gandy Golden that, they won't completely shift the coverage to him. But I also expect a step forward from Dwayne Haskins this year. And they both played together at Ohio State. So we already know that there's a little bit of chemistry there. I think his ceiling is absolutely crazy. Now, it would be much easier to say Robert Woods. Robert Woods could easily be that guy.
Yep.
But, to stay on brand, I'm going to go McLaurin.
All right. That's fine. I dig it. This is what it's for. This is your takes. And even if he doesn't finish top 5, I got a hunch he's going to finish better than 27.
Oh, absolutely. He's improving on that ADP. I think he's going to be top 20.
Yeah. His quarterback having another year to learn and not getting yanked out all the time should help. So awesome. All right. So if you guys haven't subscribed, go subscribe. Do it right now. Gonna be some great shows. Garrett, remind listeners where they can find you, sir. One more time.
All my work is with the Dynasty Nerds, and I am on Twitter at Dynasty Price.
Awesome. I can be found on Twitter at Bob's Three Toed, on YouTube at Bob's Three Toed Warriors, on Facebook, on the Word on the Streets fantasy football group. Too many damn words. Might have to change that. You can catch new shows that drop on Monday and Thursday mornings on YouTube and everywhere podcasts can be found. That's all for this show. It's been Bob's Three Toed Warriors and Mr. Garrett Price. Reminding you soon enough you'll be able to hit the waiver wire, set the lineups, dominate your opponents. Let's go win some championships together. I'll see you guys later.